Rickert, Levi. Maybe, Hola, Bosanke. Good afternoon, and thank you to our tribal leaders, our partners, and our members of the press and media for being here. This has been a full and productive week for Indian country here in our nation's capital. We gathered in Washington with a clear purpose to speak with one voice, to engage parties across all tables, and to move solutions forward for our people. Over the past 3 days, we met with members of Congress from both sides of the aisle and senior officials across the administration. In fact, there's still, I think, 2 or 3 of those meetings going on with the administration. We discussed public safety and justice, housing and infrastructure, nutrition programs, just to name a few, that keep families healthy and the appropriations needed to sustain these efforts in fiscal year 2026. I will say the tone was constructive at every turn. The participation was bipartisan, and the through line was simple. Stronger tribal nations mean a stronger United States. So here are the 3 takeaways that stood out to me for this week. Bipartisanship is not a slogan. It's real, and it still exists, and it's the only path that works. We may disagree on tactics, but when Indian country is at the table, we can find common ground on safety, on health, and economic opportunity. And those aren't partisan goals. Those are goals that unite us as people. Shared goals beat sharp edges. We won't always agree with Congress or the administration. Every election has brings its own priorities for each administration. And we make those pivots and we find those opportunities, and there's those openings. One door closes, another opens. How else could I put that? Every challenge brings an opportunity. So that's been part of the exercise this week. But we can keep our focus on our shared desires and outcomes, our safer communities, reliable healthcare, housing, dignified housing, in fact, fulfillment of trust and treaty obligations, all this that are laws of the land. The third thing is our circle of allies is growing. We saw commitment not only from longstanding champions, but from new ones. New voices who understand that tribal sovereignty, self-determination, consultation, and local solutions deliver results for the country as a whole, as well as for our tribal nations. On fiscal year 2026 appropriations, our message has been consistent. Indian country needs stable, on-time, and adequate funding that honors trust and treaty responsibilities. We're encouraged by the continued recognition of core obligations, support for public safety and justice, education, housing, and healthcare, along with attention to infrastructure, broadband, and climate resilience. We've also emphasized the importance of protecting hard-won advances, like advance appropriations for IHS, and ensuring that essential obligations such as contract support costs and 105L leasing are treated as mandatory commitments that they are. The engagement this week gives us reason to be cautiously optimistic, provided Congress completes its work on time. In that regard, potentially continuing resolution, a CR keeps the lights on, but it dims the future. It freezes funding at last year's levels, delays new starts, slows grant cycles, and injects uncertainty into police recruitment, victim services, housing projects, school staffing, clinic operations, and on and on. There's an inability to plan. Inflation quietly erodes purchasing power while communities wait. Tribes are ready to deliver, but uncertainty is the enemy of delivery. The best outcome for Indian country and for taxpayers is timely, full-year appropriations that meet our current needs. And then on this week's legislative activity, was it sparked by tribal leaders coming to town, or is it a broader commitment? The honest answer is both. The presence of tribal leaders accelerates action. It puts names and faces, issues and solutions directly in front of decision makers. And they tell us they need to hear these things. But what we saw is also part of a broader shift. More members of Congress and administration officials understand that tribal self-determination works. So proximity ignites, commitment sustains, But our job is to get well beyond just the tipping point and turn around here. Our job is to turn this week's momentum into durable progress. Awesome. Thank you, Scott. That's good. Very good. And finally, on Tribal Unity Impact Days going forward, it's been some time since we've convened this particular gathering. This week has confirmed, however, what many of us already knew, and that's that we need this forum at this time of year. So yes, NCAI intends to make Tribal Unity Impact Days an annual fixture once again and make it a permanent part of our advocacy calendar. Between these weeks on the Hill, we will continue to work. We will continue visiting offices, committees, and agencies, government to government, state to state, district to district, so that when we return each year, we're not starting conversations all over again, but we're advancing them. I want to close with this. Sovereignty is never a request. It's inherent. It was nothing that was ever given to us. We had it before there was the United States. And that was affirmed in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. The rights of tribal nations were prepaid in the founding of this country. So the framers of the Constitution indeed recognized our inherent sovereignty. Our rights and our sovereignty does not bend to election cycles or budget seasons. It is to neither party, it's the Indian party. Our tribal sovereignty is recognized in the Constitution and affirmed in treaties, court cases, and statutes that remain the supreme law of the land. Our purpose here this week was to ensure that existing commitments are honored and to build partnerships that deliver for our children and our grandchildren. So to the press, to our media, thank you for telling these stories with accuracy and care. To our partners in government, thank you. Thank you for engaging in good faith. And to our tribal leaders, thank you for traveling far and devoting your time and energy to sharing your knowledge, for speaking plainly, and for setting a clear agenda for the year ahead. We have much more work to do, but we lead this week with momentum, with allies on both sides of the aisle, and with a shared understanding that when tribal nations thrive, America thrives. Thank you.
Miigwech, President Macarro. At this point, we'll turn it over to Chairman Ernie Stevens Jr. from the Indian Gaming Association. Ernie.